Hello, Rick Tryon here with Bible101.com, and this is the 9th video in our Bible 101 series. And today I want to discuss an important thing that we need to understand when we read the Bible, and that is the question of whether we should read it literally and understand it in the strict literal sense. So what do we mean by literal? It just means that when you read it, you take the words that you're reading and you understand them in the most common way that they're understood. That's literally. And let me give you an example. And I'll take the shortest verse in the Bible as an example. And that is John 11:35, which says, Jesus wept. Well, there's no other way to take that except literally. Jesus wept. We understood those words and understand those words as Jesus wept. So that's the strict literal interpretation. And I think that for the most part, most of the Bible should be understood that way. But there are some exceptions, and I want to talk about those today. And there's 4 of the main exceptions that I want to cover in today's video. So we're going to cover figures of speech, number 1. Number 2, we're going to go over parables and analogies. Number 3, dreams, visions, and symbols. And then number 4, what I call fables, stories, or legends. So figures of speech. Those obviously aren't literal. They're figures of speech. And one of the most common ones that we run into in the Bible are ones that will attribute a human characteristic to an animal, or a human characteristic to God, like God breathed. Well, God doesn't breathe, or God stretched out his arm. Another one is that I think of is in Hosea chapter 8, verse 7, where it says that God, speaking to Israel through the prophet, says, "You sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind." So we don't take that literally. That's a figure of speech. We understand figures of speech pretty well. We use them all the time, if you think about it. It's raining cats and dogs. Well, it's not literally raining cats and dogs. It's a figure of speech. So the second area I want to talk about where you probably aren't going to take what you're reading in the Bible literally is the parables and analogies. And those are usually pretty obvious. Jesus will say, "I speak unto you a parable." And a parable is an extended figure of speech, an extended analogy or metaphor. And you see those mostly in the Gospels, where Jesus will say, "Behold, a sower went out to sow," or "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure buried in a field." And we don't take those as literally in the sense of a strict literal interpretation. We understand those as parables meant to teach a deeper truth or another truth. So the third category that comes into play when we're talking about whether or not we should interpret the Bible literally or take it literally when we read it is dreams, visions, and symbols. And you see those throughout the Bible. If for instance, Joseph in the book of Genesis had some dreams about what Pharaoh was going to happen with Pharaoh and how Pharaoh should do his governance of his kingdom. And so a dream is not a literal, it's not going to happen literally. In other words, Joseph's dream about 7 fat cattle and 7 skinny cattle, those weren't literal occurrences. They were part of his dream. And vision meant to show something, again, a deeper truth or another truth. Symbols is the same way. The book of Revelation is pretty much all symbols. The book of Revelation is a vision. For instance, in chapter 13, it talks about a beast rising out of the sea, and it's got 7 heads, and it's got 10 crowns on its heads, and these wild symbols. But they're symbols that mean something. It doesn't literally mean that a beast is going to rise out of the ocean with all of these bizarre physical characteristics. So dreams, symbols, and visions are obviously things we don't take literally. We look behind them to find a deeper meaning. And then finally, are what I call stories, fables, or legends in the Bible. And we see those are actual literary devices used to once again illustrate something else. And you see those a lot. And we understand what those are. For instance, George Washington cutting down the cherry tree. Well, that's kind of mixing a historical figure with something that is sort of a story or a legend that happened that is meant to convey a deeper truth. George Washington didn't lie. We see that in the Bible, and you have to be really careful when you're reading the Bible that whether you're looking at what would be a story or a legend or like an Aesop's fable. We see those. It doesn't make it less true. It doesn't make it less God's word. It's just another device, literary device used in the Bible to convey another truth or to illustrate something. And a couple of examples that come to mind, and this is controversial, but I'll just mention it and maybe get into it deeper in a Bible101 series, and that would be a talking snake in the garden. Well, is that literally, or was that a kind of a legend or a story used to convey another truth? Or talking donkey in Judges, etc. Some of those things you have to read and try to understand what's the deeper meaning there. So again, figures of speech, parables, dreams, visions, and these stories and legends are all things that are not literal in the Bible. So in our next episode, we're going to start wrapping up the whole Bible 101 series and probably take a passage of scripture and apply everything we've learned so far to that. So we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.